Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Thanks for joining us at a special time here. We're going to be this way for the next couple weeks, working around King Ben's schedule here a little bit, right? I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend, Jim Stam. How are you besides exhausted from hauling hockey equipment around?
Yeah, listen, man, I thought we had this all sorted out, and then I just had to sit through a deck hockey game where no bounce went the right way. Ben hit the post in the first minute of the game, and it never got better after that. So, sadly, Gary, I'm depending on the Pirates topic of the Pirates to cheer me up. So I think I'm kind of screwed tonight.
I don't know that we're headed for a cheerful show, my friend. I'm not sure. I mean, I did name it Better Faster. So when I said better, it probably upset you. But when I said faster, you were like, oh, okay, he gets it. You know,
Whew.
As soon as I dropped that faster word in there, I thought it was better.
Gary,
PR magic.
Thought it was just going to be better. And I don't know. I've heard that. I keep hearing that word from somebody, and it's funny. It sounds just a tiny bit overused, but you have eased my concerns by saying faster.
I mean, it's the greatest word ever. I mean, and when he said it, it would be like, oh yeah. I have to say that part, or they understand that I really mean it now. I have to say the faster part. Yeah. Faster. You could see it, like it would come to him after he said better. Then he'd go, faster.
Yeah. It's, you throw in a few betters, working towards winning. I love that line. That was, boy, you got to always working towards it, right?
Well, we're going to get into those. We will. So here we go again. While other teams are playing playoff games, we're looking at our draft lottery odds.
Yay.
5.31%. Thank you very much. I mean, it sucks. And everyone is rightly passionate right now, Jim.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk this through tonight, the decisions they've made. And when they do annoying things again, we'll be back at it. But after this week, for the most part, man, we're talking ball as much as possible. I hope that's okay with everyone. This is a Pirates Fan Forum. I assume if you're here, you have not renounced your fandom. If you're looking for me to lead your protest, I'm probably not going to do it. Jim, you see any of that any different?
No, we touched on this right before we got on here tonight. And look, tonight is going to be, we're going to talk about some things, some ugly things. But I think at the core, what this show, Gary, is, and what it's always been about, is we know the situation. We know the situation up in the ivory tower, do we not? But we talk about what is, and the moves that they can make, and how things play out. So, 6 months of complaining is not going to happen here. We're going to dive into it tonight, though. And then we're going to get back to talking baseball, because regardless of what that situation is, that's why we do this, because we talk like X's and O's, right? Like, and you deal with the hand that you're played. Not that we're happy with it, but it is what it is. And we're going to talk about that in the off season quite a bit, because it's a huge off season, is it not? I mean,
it has to be. I think when we get into the quotes, I think you could pretty easily say that Cherington and Shelton are tied together this year. I think that's discoverable. I think that's evidentiary. So we'll talk about it, and I think we'll get around to kind of feeling like there's some extra pressure next year. It's not like we're not going to call them on it.
No.
But this is a huge year for a lot of reasons, and one of them is that this returning core did not produce numbers in the win total column this year, but I still like a lot of this team that's coming back, and I feel pretty good about some elements of it. And I don't think they're all that far away, even for a cheap team. So,
yeah,
I'm being there even for, I think a moron could find a couple guys here and there for what they need. Really, it almost doesn't matter what I think of them. I don't think they're that far away.
yeah, and we're going to talk about some of the arbitration eligible stuff and all that too, right? So, in the middle, look,
how do you stay a fan, Jim? I mean, like, this is the biggest question I get. You have people basically, they tell you every time that the season's over, they're done being fans, right? I don't believe most of them. Most of them will be the same people telling me next, will there be a couple? Sure there will. I met probably 15 new ones this year too. It's not like that changes. It's not like I personally lose any sleep over it or care.
Right.
Why are you here? I mean, I'm here because I like baseball. I prefer professional baseball. And the Pittsburgh Pirates play 10 minutes from my house. So guess which team I follow? And I grew up here, and it's a legacy. And at some point, I've never seen a championship. I mean, I was 2 years old when they won in '79. It's not like it's ever paid off for me. But I love them, man. I don't know what else to tell you. They're my team.
Yeah, to answer your question, for me is, first and foremost, I love baseball. I played it half my life. I played it into college. Like, it's in my bones, and it's always going to be in my bones.
It's also destroyed some of your bones too.
Yeah. This is true. I will post my MRI next week after I talk to the surgeon, and we'll get a doctor on here and break that down. But no, look, like, I love this game. I love every little intricacy about this game. I love being a total baseball nerd when I'm watching the game and all the little details that go into every pitch. And I'm born and raised Pittsburgh, man. Like, of course I'm going to support the Pirates and root for them. And I know a lot of people say, well, hey, quit supporting them, whatever, don't give them any of your money. Trust me, that doesn't work. They don't need any of our money. They're just fine. But yeah, listen, I'm in for the long haul because I'm from Pittsburgh and I support these teams. And doesn't mean I won't bash them when it's necessary. But here we are, Gary. This is our team. We love the Pirates.
Yep. If this town ever somehow weaseled their way into getting an NBA team, like they could actually support it, I'd start watching the NBA.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm just telling you, like, and it's not like I have anything against the NBA. I love basketball. I watch Pitt. I love March Madness.
Yeah, it's why we love Pitt football and we love Pitt basketball is because, like, for me it's easy. Like, these are the teams here. This is what I root for. It's all I've ever known.
It's why I'm pretending to understand volleyball right now.
Yeah, exactly. Which funny side note there is, Gary, my wife's from Nebraska. Well, Nebraska is like,
yeah, they're like number 2 right now. Yeah,
the blue blood of women's college volleyball. So we've actually really gotten into that too. So and you think about that is, man, all we want here is for the Pirates to just give us something to cheer about and have it be meaningful.
Yep.
And they're going to have to deal with an owner that is tough to live with. But other teams have done it and made it far. The Pirates should be able to still do that, but they've got to figure some things out.
Let's take a quick break and then let's do what Adam says. Let's get on the accountability train. Not that anybody running the team actually did, because I haven't seen that yet.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Let's get right into it, Jim. It's quote time, right?
Let's do it.
The funny thing is, like, why do I even need to read the quotes? Because most of them don't really say much of anything. You know, what everyone wanted to hear about was like a good explanation of why keeping Derek Shelton around was going to make more sense this time than it, than it did last year even. You know, what's the explanation? Why would you do this? I can't 100% tell you we got answers to those questions. We certainly didn't get direct answers to those questions. And it's political season right now, Jim. And everything he says reads like a freaking political ad. Everything he says is like an answer to a debate question.
It really is. I was literally just going to say that, is that it almost seems like you're watching a politician up there just kind of grandstanding and word salad-ing his way through things. And then at the end of it, you're just like, what the hell just happened? What did I even hear?
In general, these quotes, like, I think in the overall thing I took away, the overriding thing I took away was that he can't have come all that close to getting fired, or else there's no way he could stand up there and give as many non-answers as he did, or obvious deflections back to Bob that he did. Because now Bob's going to have to answer some of those questions. They are going to come up to him at some point. There will be a press availability at some point, and he's going to have to answer the questions that Ben Cherington put on the table for him yesterday. I don't think the GM in trouble does
streamed. It won't be streamed because we can't get that. But
never.
Yes.
In fact, I was going to play you some of the sound bites. There's only a few of them up on YouTube. Like Dayon has some on this channel, actually. Go check them out. And and we have Jenna Harner recorded one, but the audio's pretty sketchy. Kind of isn't going to come through real well on a podcast. In fact, I heard a couple other people try to do so. I'm going to just spare you it and read it. So if I insert a little extra smarm, forgive me, because it's not going to change the meaning of any of it. Let's start, Jim.
All right.
So he's basically answering like what's going to be different, right? There's clear evidence progress has been made, and clearly not enough. I could almost stop there because I'm not really sure how you say something like that, but let's finish this paragraph and just kind of ingest it as a whole. We're winning more games. Whew. Boy, that's 2 Pinocchios I count so far. We're not winning enough. Okay, maybe that takes one of the Pinocchios away.
I was told there would be no fact checking during this this segment. So
I'm sorry. It has to happen better and faster, Jim. I really do believe we go into 2025 already with the strongest, deepest roster we've had since I've been here. We need to make it better. That last part there, that's the only part of this argument for progress or better that I think you can make with a straight face. And I don't think he did a good job of making that argument. All he had to do is like basically say side by side, would you prefer what we finished 2023 with or what we finished 2024 with to come back next year? Because regardless of record, your answer is 2024. That's all he had to say, really. It's the truth. And then he said, we got to coach him better. And then I think a lot of people would have been like, all right, why is Shelton going to coach it better? We'll get into that. What do you think of that statement?
Yeah, well, right away, when you start with a record is better or winning is better, however the hell he said that, I mean, people are going to just, what are you doing? People have the internet. They're not in Asheville, North Carolina right now. They have an idea of what's going on in the world. So you start out with just this. It's a laughable statement, right? Because everyone knows the record. Okay, are you talking from 2020 to 2024? Okay, then whatever. It's still a weak argument, but so look. Here's the thing, and this is why I love the 2025 season for fans, is because we don't have to talk anymore about the process in the sense of, oh, well, the record doesn't say this, and the record, isn't that. But now it's just going to come down to wins and losses. Are you winning more than you're losing? I think for fans, now you can take all the other stuff out of it and you can just hammer down on a record. And if he wants to talk about a record and not be honest about it, you're already off on the wrong foot with this fan base. You just are.
Right. I mean, I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you said there. I don't think that they think like that. I think for Ben Cherington, I think what he wanted to do, and this is true if you've read his book, you kind of know this is what he wanted. And it's actually what he said when he got here as far as what was attractive to him about coming to Pittsburgh. He wanted to build a system from ground up, from scratch, that would be self-sustaining. I know a lot of you have kind of went back in history and pretended that he told you there was a 5-year plan, but he didn't. Okay? It may be implied for life ever since Dave Littlefield uttered those famous words. But, it's not what this one was supposed to be. He's getting rushed now.
Yeah, well, they're behind, but
they're behind, and you can't do
no
that in
set date.
Pittsburgh. And the thing is that frustrates me is I know this is the bill of goods that he sold Bob. And Bob should have known better. Bob should have told him, we've done this before. It doesn't go over well. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think what scares me, Jim, is I feel like he and Derek Shelton are now hitched at the hip. And I feel like he's going to try to make some bigger swings than he's comfortable with in order to accelerate whatever his little idea was. And it scares the hell out of me what he's going to do to it. Because he could turn something sustainable into a very short window real quick.
Tell me what you mean by that, and the listeners, because tell me what you mean by taking a big swing or exactly how you could see that happening.
I think he could do something that's really, really good for the short term, as far as getting a nice hitter for a couple of years. And he could throw away something that he absolutely needs in order for this thing to not be dead in the water and over by 2028. That's what I'm worried about.
Do you think some fans would take that?
I think some fans would take it until they saw it. And I also don't think this team manages well enough to go out and get somebody else's problem and fix them. And I think that's the kind of thing he would try to do to outsmart everybody. You know what I mean? As opposed to going out and trying to get a star, I think he would take a swing on somebody that could be a star, or maybe was a star last year. Something that's a little bit cheaper. You know what I mean? And it'll just weaken them ever so slightly.
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest question mark I always had in this whole thing was because what you've heard from Cherington is that this is something that they want to have it to be, there's a sustainability to it, right? That there's necessarily no window, whatever. I've always questioned the Pirates of all organizations being able to do that.
Sure.
So that was always a little bit, to me, the pie in the sky.
I would agree. I just don't know that he knows any different. And I saw what he did in Boston. I saw what he did in Boston when they tried to course correct him from what he came up under. and they told him to go and push the kettle down and make it faster. And then I saw what he did, and it blew the whole thing up and got him fired. And that's what I'm afraid of him bringing here. You know, I'm afraid of him doing the same thing, basically taking a big swing on a Pablo Sandoval and having it all fall apart. That's what I'm worried about.
Obviously, that could easily happen. There would be pressure on him this year to produce that just flat out hasn't been there. They've had their extended honeymoon period, hopefully, where wins have to start mattering. I could see that. But there's also a part of me that thinks, are you just as guilty if you sit back and do nothing and just stay the course? And you know what I mean? Like, so, you know, get rich or die trying. I almost could see that more in the sense of, or accept it more than just sticking to a plan, not taking any chances. So I think, you know, that's a conversation that maybe is a separate one in and of itself of what we're talking about. But I think fans are just, they'll take a shot at winning. They say they'll take a shot at winning, damned the results down the road or the aftermath of it.
Yeah, and I think I would too. I think that's the very obvious choice, especially for a fan base that's never seen one, right? My fear is letting somebody take that swing who's shown me nothing in 5 years, that as far as like being able to evaluate major league talent. And you know what I mean? And I'm going to let him take that big swing, because if he takes that big swing, then we hire the next GM after he gets fired for failing. And that next GM comes in and goes, oh, cupboard's bare again. I better start over. And Bob goes, well, what's the alternative? Spend some money. I think.
Certainly. And you have to ask yourself the question of, GM and coach wise, who necessarily are you going to even attract with some of their situation and their reputation? I think too, like what I come back to, Gary, with this whole thing is like, and Paul Skeens to me has just changed my line of thinking a little bit, which is that every day you have him in a Pirate uniform and every day he pitches, you better try to maximize that, because we've gone a long time, our lives even, without seeing a guy like this. You know, he fell into their lap. They have him. There's no guarantee you're going to keep him. What are you going to do in that time frame? What are you planning on doing? Because we don't throw around the word generational, but Twitter does.
Even if they were to go out there and do something, like say they do something crazy, like he's motivated now to like give the fans some kind of sign, and he goes out and he extends Paul Skeens for 10 years, right? Let's just live in fantasy world. He extends him for 10 years. Don't worry about the amount. Just shut your eyes and pretend he does it. Do they use that as a crutch for why they can't do other things? Like, or do they still try to do everything they've been doing in the slow poke, take it as it comes way that they do? Do they have less urgency if they extend him?
Well,
dead air is money, brother.
Gary, are you there? What's that?
Dead air is money, brother.
What's that?
Can't do dead air.
No. You're cutting out, so I wasn't sure if you were still there. So, yeah, they could use that as an excuse. We've done everything we can to sign Paul Skeens. We've given him this big money, and we don't have the resources now to do anything more. I could absolutely see them taking.
It would be like when Seattle signed King Felix and then did nothing around him all that time. you know?
Yeah.
All right, let's do another one here.
And I wouldn't put it past Gary. I wouldn't put it past the Pirates to try to get those 3 or 4 extra years out of Paul Skeens and be happy with that. Face of the franchise, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. All right.
Patrick, he's your Patrick Mahomes.
You ready for some double talk? Of course you are. Let's talk about payroll.
I thought we already started that.
Let's talk about payroll going up. Payroll is not what's going to drive winning here the most. That's mostly because just simply of the structure of the game in a place like Pittsburgh to win. There are other places. There's no place exactly like Pittsburgh, but there are other places that are similar. And you look at how those teams win and how we're going to win here, it's going to be through all those other things we're talking about. He didn't talk about any other things. Like there was no other things, man. You never told me any things. What things are you doing? What things are you talking about? There's nothing there. I talked for like a minute. There's nothing there. I don't know from that if payroll's going up, if he has enough money, if Bob's holding money back. Did you have money sitting on the table? I don't know shit from that.
And that's the frustrating thing too, is we can never get really like a straight answer on that. Is there some money? Is there? Was there? Hey, when Bob started this whole thing 4 or 5 years ago, he said, spend when appropriate. Well, if it's not appropriate now, when is it ever going to be?
Well, let's get to this next one, because many of you will remember back around the trade deadline, I told you all a story about how they had to make the trade of Martin Perez before they could go and finalize the Brian De La Cruz trade. Remember? And I said at some point it would get reported, right? I said, trust your journalists, but at some point it'll get reported. Here's a quote from Ben Cherington. You tell me what this says. At the time, this is a question about the deadline. At the time, we felt in order to execute the plan that we wanted to execute, that trade was an important component. We weren't looking to get rid of Martin Perez necessarily, but in the portfolio of what we were trying to do, it fit into that and allowed us to do what we wanted to do. You tell me that doesn't sound like I had to move him to make sure I could afford the other crap I wanted.
Well, if you're saying it allowed us to do what we wanted to do, I can only interpret that part of it in one way.
Sounds to me an awful lot like admitting he didn't even have the room to make the moves in a certain order. That's what it sounds like to me.
I actually think it was a good thing to actually try to move Martin Perez at that point. I don't have an issue with the actual move. I think that was actually a good thing. It's just, if that's what you had to do, the only thing that gives me pause about that, Gary, is Chapman stayed. So you would have thought if there was somebody that they could have moved, Chapman would have been very, very attractive as well for teams.
One's got a pro rated of 8.5. One's got a pro rated of 10.5. One's actually helping you. One wasn't. That's why you get rid of one of them, right? I mean, if you have to pick, of course. Yeah, and if you have to pick. So I'm just saying, like, looking at what happened to the rotation down the block there, seems to me like he wouldn't have traded Martin Perez at all if he didn't have to clear some room. So in all of this, because Ben Cherington was talking, he's going to take most of the heat. But let's never, ever take the heat off of where it belongs. Let's always make sure that burner is hot underneath the person that causes all of this. It's Bob Nutting, 100%. I already said I'm not going to lead any pickets and stuff for you because I want baseball and I want to watch it. But that's the problem. And until he changes or the league changes to force him to change, It is what it is. I think it's awful
Yeah, I've
though
always
to like take the crap that the GM takes all the time when things like that happen, because that's not his fault. That's telling you he can't be going out and getting guys he wants or thinks will help. He has to get guys that he thinks might help because he can afford them. And oh, by the way, you've got to weaken your team in another area before you can do it. That's on the owner, at least, for making his job harder than it need be in a hard enough thing to ask to do somebody. It's a hard enough thing to ask somebody to win a championship on a shoestring budget. It's another thing to ask them to win it on a shoestring budget, hopping on one leg with a phone that only works 30 minutes a day. I mean, like, at some point, it almost doesn't matter who the GM is, because they're always going to be put into this template.
Yeah, you're essentially trying to, in a game where some of the teams are already playing with one hand tied behind their back, Bob wants to tie one of your feet too.
Yeah.
And to me,
the dream here is that they hire some hotshot that knows what he's doing, and he goes out and does something different. That dream can never happen with Bob. Bob needs somebody that promises he's going to be careful in the right ways. There's certain things he's not going to do. There's certain ways he's going to do it. And if somebody came to him with some wacky idea like Moneyball, like, hey, I just figured out, like, if you tell guys never to swing on a 2-2 count, you can win like 30 extra games. That's what the stats say. I don't understand it, but that's what the stats say. Do you think Bob's going to be the first one to jump out and try it?
No. And that goes back to the quick comment I made earlier, which is you'd even have to wonder who in their right mind would take the position that is either going to be offered once Ben Cherington and Derek Shelton are gone, right? Because because unless you're just going to say, well, this is my shot, I might not get another shot at this. It reminds me of like the Oakland Raiders at the end of the Al Davis regime, where Art Shell
get fired the next year, yeah, whatever.
Tom Cable got to be a head coach. Like, you take it because there's only one of 32 of those jobs, and you may never see it again. So you take it. It's not ideal. But that's the problem too, is after you see how this team operates, who's going to want those jobs?
That's what I'm saying. Like, as we read through these statements, though, like, I can't stand the way Ben Cherington approaches the media. I can't stand the way he approaches the fans. I don't even get the impression that he truly cares about the fans as much as you kind of feel like he's disappointed that we just don't get the vision. Like, that's the impression I get, is that he's just a little bit miffed that you don't understand what's going on. And Neil Huntington used to make me feel that way too. He really did. I said it all the time. It was something that bothered the hell out of me about him. At least he had one.
I think like, to drill down on this a little bit more, is what we're saying is look, Ben Cherington hasn't done his job, but Ben Cherington is going to go out there and say what he needs to say to get through these types of appearances and interviews. Bob is the problem. Bob's always going to be the problem.
He could offer a little bit more directness too. Like,
he could do it in a way that it doesn't sound good to Pittsburghers. I will tell you that much.
Like, here's one. This is about, is Andrew McCutchen coming back? Somebody has to ask it. I don't know which rookie journalist they chose to fall on that grenade, but we've said before, I'll say it again. We'd love to find a way for Andrew to finish his career in a Pirates uniform. That's as far as we've gone to this point. Can't you just say yes? We all know We all know
It
he's
sounds
coming back. We all know your
it
boss
sounds
made the decision.
it sounds to me like, well, we're gonna first see if he'll take 3.5 million before we do it.
Oh, I mean, like, the guy just hit 20 home runs for you. Like, he wants to come back. Don't mess around with it. It's the only good PR thing you've done.
Right.
Like, and as I understand it, he wouldn't be here if it was just Ben's choice. So maybe he's still kicking and screaming about it. But I don't think they're going to give him a second win after Shelton.
Well, for one of the very few things Ben should thank Bob for is having Andrew McCutchen, because he's actually been a decent performer from a statistical standpoint. Ben certainly hasn't been able to provide that on the field, and that's another lucky thing that Andrew McCutchen expressed some desire, because honestly, you look at his numbers on the Pirates, he fared pretty well.
It's just so frustrating reading through this stuff, man. Like,
It is.
it really frustrates me.
I can
let's
tell.
talk about
Go for another one.
Let's talk about what he did last off season, okay? And somebody taught him a new word called clarify or clarity, and so he's using it like in every sentence now. One of the things this year clarified for me is that while relative to free agency to trades is, I have no idea what that means, that I think our approach to free agency the last two off seasons and sort of the overall results we got from that have been fine. Wow. I mean, this is a guy that somehow talked Bob into not firing him. Can't have said that. What was fine? What was fine that he brought in here as a free agent? That's what he specifically said. These last two off seasons. Jose Quintana, I'll go back 2 years. I liked that. I guess Santana was good last year, right?
Decent.
I don't count Joey Bart.
Chapman.
That was a waiver.
Chapman.
Yeah, Chapman. Do you count Grandal because of the way he finished?
I can't.
Yeah, I can't count Rowdy.
Depends on what your standards are. You know what I mean? Like, if they're Pirates standards, yeah, I suppose I could count some of them. If they're serious teams, interested in actually winning, no.
Bro, those aren't. I don't know how you make that statement. I just don't. It's indefensible. It's an indefensible statement. I don't know how you approach fans or a media that is at least educated in baseball a little. I mean, I know some of them got training wheels still. But free agency, the last two off seasons, and sort of the overall results we got from that have been fine. Oh my God, no. I don't know what else to say about that.
Especially when you talk about a limited dollar amount to spend. Like, when it's a finite number and you just don't have an open checkbook,
yeah,
you better be really, really good at targeting and getting the guys you need. And at best, he's got a couple guys on the fringe besides Chapman that have done anything to turn it into like trades for prospects. Even that hasn't been great.
Honestly, I was flabbergasted when I heard it. Flabbergasted.
I did not hear that quote.
I should say
that is me
digesting
it.
Flabbergasted when I read it, because Lord knows I couldn't hear it.
No.
Which as I read it, I kind of understood why.
Apparently you have to have like government security clearance for one of those pressers.
Yeah. You'd like to be arguing about or celebrating Andy Haynes being gone. But we already told you that we thought the message was going to stay the same, right? So somebody asked him basically like, what's going to change with the hitting approach? Good luck with this one, everyone. It's much more about consistency of messaging, consistency of follow through, clarity, simple clarity. Boy, we could use some, Ben. What are we trying to improve? How are we trying to beat this pitcher? That's a lot easier for me to say than it is to actually do every day. But I think it's more than that, a brand new philosophy. No,
Do these types of guys forget that they're actually overseeing ball players? Because that, Gary, sounds like something I'd hear at a corporation. And this ain't corporate America.
well, here's the second part.
And
ultimately, serve the hitters. The hitters go up there every night and they got to do something that's really hard. And we want all of them to be in the clearest frame of mind possible when they're doing it. So that's follow up about, they're basically saying the message that Andy Haynes, I didn't even read you all the Andy Haynes fluff before it. Okay. All the work around, he works really hard, puke stuff. Like,
wish him the best. Wish him the best.
He'll get a job really quick. He literally said, "No, he won't. Not in the majors. He won't." Anyways,
yeah,
that whole consistency
Yokoshima
thing, that whole consistency thing, and the clarity and the simplicity of the language and how they get this message to people. It's not about changing the philosophy. It's basically about telling them smarter. Serve the hitters, Jim. Want them up there with a clear frame of mind. So somehow, remember I told you a while ago, again, I mean, I hate to like keep going back to things I said, and we're going to have a guest on here pretty soon that's going to elaborate on this a little bit. Caden Smith and Jigman's going to be on with us. But I told you that they were overloading these kids when they come up from the minors with information, just swamping them. Andy Haynes, who was in charge of the entire system of hitting from top to bottom, was supposed to be preparing them for the major leagues. But when they got to the major leagues, they were seeing things that they had never even been presented with and asked to digest it on game day. And sometimes when these kids come like an hour or two before, they don't get to see them at all. And they get up there and they get shoved into the game and they usually do pretty well, right? And then they go into the tank for the next couple days after that. Well, that's after they've gotten their overload package. All the things to look out for and do differently than what they've been taught their entire way up here. So all I can say is he's probably right with all of this crap that he said. But dude, all you have to do is say that like he was not delivering the message well. That's it. All this other crap and fluff and clarity, and dude, we're giving these hitters too much to think about. That's it.
I was just gonna say, like, to me, it really just comes back to like, first of all, you want to give a message. How about simplify your message? Whatever that is, simplify it. So think too, like with hitting, and I will go to my grave saying this about hitting. If you overthink hitting,
you're dead.
You are dead in the water. You're dead in the water. And I don't care if you're 8 or you're 38. Like, yes, there has to be a game plan and a mindset and a plan of attack and all that. But if you are going to take hitters out of a lot of their natural ability and how that they might approach things, man, I think you are punching up and trying to run uphill the whole time. And I just don't understand why they try to do that to every single hitter that they come across. Hasn't there been enough evidence with this organization and the fact that they don't produce anything on the offensive side of things? How much more evidence do you need that maybe that message isn't the right message?
I mean, you got the impression too that he was pained to make this decision. Like even like that preamble that I didn't read. I encourage you to go find it somewhere, but he comes across as like almost like this wasn't even still an easy decision for him. I don't know how you get around that. I don't. I think at some point, you know, at some point he's going to either succeed by accident or or get let go. That's where I'm at if you really want the truth.
Well, I do think like what we've seen out of Cherington is and in a way I can respect this. It's foolish, I think, but I can also respect of like I'm going to go down with the ship. It's going to be the way that I think it's going to be, and it will work. But there's no adaptability there either. So,
Right.
yeah, I watched a podcast today, and it was with all you younger people. I apologize for this reference, but it was John Riggins, and he was talking about like the adaptability of like Joe Gibbs and his coaching staff and how they
Right.
adapted to things. And like that's what you don't see from the Pirates is there's no willingness to adapt. It's this is it. This is what we're doing. It's gonna work until it doesn't work.
Well, I mean it's a thing, man. Last thing we have to talk about is really Derek Shelton. He chose to keep Derek Shelton. Sounds to me like he went to bat for Derek Shelton. Sounds to me like he kind of fell on the grenade and said, if I'm gonna stay with him, it's only right. Or basically he was told like you got one more year, one way or another, to get into the playoffs. And I guess if I'm him, I might take the devil that I danced with on the way here as opposed to the one I don't know too. If I really feel like I only have one more year, maybe I don't make that move either.
Oh, I can totally see why he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Like I would have gotten rid of him. But again, this is the down with the ship philosophy. I think he's going to stick with the guy that he knows, that he has a good working relationship with, that will do what is asked of him. And that's what Cherington's going to value. I do.
What do you think about the decision to keep Derek Shelton?
I think as that last month closed out of the season, to me, it became obvious that a change was needed.
I thought they quit.
Even
I thought they quit towards the end of the year. I really did.
Yeah, and then you hear about some clubhouse things, and to me, he doesn't even come across as a guy that players necessarily respect like you have to. They may like him, but I don't know that there's a whole lot of like healthy respect for him.
Yeah, and I think in some years, and there's some mixes of players where, well, maybe that doesn't matter quite as much because they're the type that, let's just say, like you drop them off at church for Sunday morning and you don't worry about them coming out with messed up hair and their shirts untucked. Like Brian Reynolds is a quiet guy. Brian Hayes is a quiet guy. Jack Sawinski was a quiet guy. When they had a room filled with a whole bunch of pretty affable guys. They were okay, like I think bending to whatever, and they liked the guy enough and everything. But Cherington is hitching his wagon to him, man. It feels to me like it could change things, man. It really could. This could be an off season that we can't predict.
There's a comfortability there that I think at this point works negatively with a team that is trying to find every kind of like angle they can to be competitive and make up some of that difference. I'm not suggesting you swap out Derek Shelton with this roster with another manager and all of a sudden they won 15 more games. I don't think it works that way. But I
Yeah.
do think at some point you have to be able to get a guy in there that's going to say, there are certain things that are acceptable on this field every night. And if you aren't going to do that, then guess what? We're going to find somebody that will, or we'll keep trying to find somebody that will. And I don't think the players feel that way about a Derek Shelton. I think it trickles down from Bob Nutting, but I don't think the players feel that way about a Derek Shelton.
I tend to agree with you. I thought a change needed made. We made that pretty clear. It's not like I'm going to change my mind on that, but I do think that that Derek Shelton has some good qualities. I just don't think that instruction is one of them. It seems like a really poor choice to have brought a guy back that has not done anything on the development end. Even if you're going to blame Andy Haynes for that fact, well, Derek Shelton sat in that dugout watching it happen too. And Derek Shelton, I know this for a fact, heard from some of those players that they were being overwhelmed. So he didn't do anything about it. That's why I really felt like they needed to clean house, Jim. I'm not going to cry about it all off season, but to me, I was very disappointed by the choice. I thought they would take a good swing at trying to bring in another manager. Also, I don't think that I can remember a coach starting their career with 5 straight losing seasons and getting another crack at it. I don't think I can remember it. If it's happened, I don't remember it. Maybe it's one of those 1940 things or something, but I don't remember that ever happening. It's certainly odd.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the idea of this is the process, and there's a comfortability there that everyone has time. Well, sometimes you have to play with a little bit of an edge. I think players do. I think a manager should be managing like that at times. And I just haven't seen that urgency. There's no urgency.
Yeah.
So again, that's the problem. I will say one more thing. Gary, you brought up a good point a couple episodes ago where honestly, Derek Shelton could be fired for how he used David Bednar alone in the 5th year of him being here and continuing to run a guy out there that could not close out games. That alone was a fireable offense. That alone.
I completely agree. So you know what we should do?
Well, good, because you said it.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to do Call Your Shot. And then we're going to get right into talking about some David Bednar.
Yeah.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Jim, we're going to talk about the Pirates ARB estimates because they are in from our good friends over at MLB Trade Rumors. This is about the fastest I can ever remember them coming out. I certainly don't remember them coming out during the playoffs before. That's pretty cool, actually. We're going to talk through the names. We're going to talk through the names a little bit here, but the first one that I want to talk about, it's going to be our Call Your Shot. All right, and Call Your Shot is brought to you by our friends over at Shop Yins, like always. And for having the Call Your Shot question this week, our good friend Adam Yarkovsky has a good question here. Going to get himself a nice little. He had a good question. He had a good question, and this is the same dude that called Brian Reynolds moving to first base like 3 years ago while we laughed in his face. So let's have a little respect. Let's have a little respect. He's in
Put
one of
some
those lines of he's in one of those lines of work where you want to kind of have some, you want to be the guy that gave him the Baby Ruth. Let's just say. Like you want to be the guy that gave him a candy bar every day. That's all.
Don't stick it in his pocket. He might get attacked for it, but
All right. So he asks, the back end had 19 losses. How can you justify bringing back Bednar at a $6.6 million arbitration projection? He's got a second part about he's assuming Chapman's out of the question. I don't know that Bednar's that he's out of the question, but as far as Bednar goes, that is a hell of an arbitration estimate. I hope that estimate's wrong. I hope somebody aside from trade rumors comes along and makes that something different. Because bluntly, I would offer the Renegade 20% less than he made this year, because you can legally do that in the arbitration process. And I'd start from there. In fact, if he turned it down, I might just tell him to walk.
here's the interesting thing about this is, if we're having this conversation about a normal baseball team, a normal franchise, it's probably a different conversation. But if you believe, and I do, and I think most fans do, that there's only so much money in a pot, that Gary's glasses are fogging up. Leave him alone. I'm talking about the comments right now. Gary's fine.
I'm drinking beer. It's all right.
He's cooling off. Then yeah, I think you talk about David Bednar, but I got to be honest with you. At that number,
that's too much.
Gary, I can't justify it. If
I
I know I only have so much money to go around, and there's going to be other guys like this we're going to talk about too, but David Bednar is the one, right? Hometown boy.
Let's see. Adam's here. He says that's where he's at 3.9 million ARB offer, or maybe 2 years at 7 at the most. Yeah, something like that would work too, because then you could paint it as an extension, and then there's no hard feelings if you want to go that route, if you care that much, which I'm sure they do. Let me read you Cherington's quotes about David Bednar, since we're on a roll with his quotes anyway.
Sure, let's go back to it.
The pitch qualities are there. He knows they're there, which probably helps him feel good. It also probably frustrates him, given that he knows they're there and he couldn't solve this. It's a tiny sample, and that's really dangerous. It was the whole season. That's a pretty damn big sample, actually. And I'm honestly, like, when he makes these statements, it's not just misleading. It's straight up no. There's
Even
50 podcasters in this town that would know that's wrong.
Even when Bednar had his decent stretch, there were problems in there.
Right. So, and then he finishes it with, he did feel like the last few outings of September were pretty encouraging from the perspective. He's got some ideas of how to get after his off season in a way that sets him up even better. Well, that's just swell. Sounds to me like they have every intention of bringing him back. Boy, if they just straight up give him that ARB award, though, Jim, whew, they're dumber than I even thought. I actually might be more angry about that than I would be about any move they've made so far. Like, that's the dumbest thing you could possibly do.
Well, the scary thing about the Pirates is they could do that. They could do it. I think they like having the hometown guy.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And I don't know that they want to let it get messy. But here's the funny part about that is, this would be the one time where I think people would understand that it's not the time to go easy on somebody just because they're from here and you don't want it. Like, people would understand it would be a business decision. for all the business decisions they seem to make that fans are like, oh, that's grimy. I think a lot of people would say that truly follow this team, that's too much. We can't be spending $6.5 million on David Bednar. We can't do it.
Gaslighting, huh? Matt comes in with gaslighting. Well, we already called him a politician, brother. So, like, why wouldn't he be playing the entire playbook, right? Yeah, that's a no for me, Jim. And if that's controversial to anyone, I'd have to imagine you didn't watch this season. Honestly, I don't think David could even come back with a straight face and ask for something like that. He knows he didn't earn a raise like that. He knows he did.
If I was David Bednar, I'd have been shocked if I saw that number. I'd be like, really? You know,
and I'm sorry if Kutch is still a maybe. Then David Bednar doesn't just get whatever the arbitration process says. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't.
And if he gets his feelings hurt over it, I would say so be it. I would say so be it. They just don't have. We just know that there is only so much to go around.
Do you know what helps protect
self-imposed or not?
The hometown hero thing helps protect you as long as you're performing. You stop performing, all of a sudden, most people don't really care where you came from anymore.
Sure.
That's all I'm going to say. If we were to decide to not pick up his arbitration, if they just non-tendered David Bednar, I bet there'd be people that were mad. And I also bet he would go and perform somewhere. I have no doubt that he'll bounce back to some degree. But I want to pay him like a reliever. I don't want to pay him like some premium closer. He's not right now. That's all. Like that's accountability in a sense too. You know, and I like to think that David probably has more of it than Ben. I would think they'll come to some deal. I love the idea of the 2 for $7. I think that's a great compromise. You know, and then if he's only a bullpen arm, great. Who cares? $3.5 million.
I agree. I think that's totally digestible. Let's get on to some of these other guys too, because he's not the only one. But if it's my call and it's David Bednar and it's got to be $6.5 million, I tell David Bednar, thank you for everything you've done here, and good luck.
Yep. Dennis Santana feels like a no-brainer at $1.8 million. Boy, did he perform. Mm-hmm. I would caution everybody, this could easily be Ryan Borucki 2.0, and I don't think Borucki's issues were just his injury. So, you know, most of his history looks a lot more like what he's done when he's been available this year than what he did last year. We probably put a little bit too much importance on those guys, you know?
I think it's really tough with a guy that hasn't had that kind of success before to recapture that mojo, especially after having an injury. I just that makes it really difficult.
Right. Jake Bauers just hit a home run for Milwaukee. I think they're up 1-0.
Wow.
In the 7th inning. So pretty good game going on between the Mets and the Brew Crew. David Bednar, we talked about. Ben Heller, $1 million. I can't imagine that's even a conversation. Johan Oviedos, no brainer, $1.5 million. That's not going to be a problem at all.
What about Bailey Falter?
Bailey Falter, $2.8 million. I think that's for sure.
Yep.
Colin Holderman, 1.4. Yes, that's a for sure, even though 100%. He too had hard times.
100%.
Joey Bart, 1.8. Oh, please. Absolutely. In fact, you probably try to just go ahead and see if he'll do a 2-year deal. That's a great backup to have one way or another. You know, just don't mess around with it. Brian De La Cruz, this starts to get controversial. $4 million.
Yeah, this is the other guy, right? Besides Bednar that we need to talk about.
I think we have another one yet, but yeah.
Okay.
Brian De La Cruz.
What do you think?
Well, I would do it, but I wouldn't offer him $4 million. I mean, I'd offer him something under that. I want he and Jack to compete in spring, and they both have options. And if it works out that they start in AAA, so be it. I want better depth waiting in the minors for actual help or different things to try. And that's two guys that I don't necessarily want to give a roster spot to, but I think I want to give them a 40-man spot. And I think that that's cheap enough that that's a place I'd like to see the Pirates spend a little extra money. Let's spend a little extra money there and take a swing on a guy and put him in the minors if it doesn't work out. He's got big time power potential. You could do a lot worse than that for somebody that's like on the edge of your roster.
Yeah. Again, I come back to, if we're dealing with a normal organization that has money to spend, I can go down that road. $4 million shouldn't be that big of a deal. That's the sad thing. Shouldn't be that big of a deal.
I'm just saying what I would do. I'm not saying they will.
No.
I don't even feel like they traded anything that's really going to hurt us for him. They traded Shim and Garrett Forrester. I doubt either of them will even see the big leagues within the next 3 years, if ever.
No.
So
I'm counting dollars, Gary, because they seem to.
Well, I'm not. I'm kind of thinking more like there's a lot of pressure on you this year. Let's not go into the year with like absolutely nothing in the minors that we think we can call up here. You're going to go out and get like some NRIs anyway. Brian De La Cruz has hit 20 home runs in this league. That's a better bet to me than an NRI. And I throw that in the minors. He's got an option. That's kind of the benefit of having him. He's got team control and options. To me, that's what I want to spend some money on there. I don't think they have an awful lot of holes to fill. So let's make sure that the depth that we have behind our big swings in the outfield are supported by something. That's all.
And I can get behind it in the sense that like it's insurance for Jack Sawinski. And if people have made up their minds about Jack, I get it. I don't know that I necessarily have. So I can see it that way. Would I like to not pay him? Would I like to not pay De La Cruz $4 million? Absolutely.
Right. So I wouldn't.
So
maybe I'd offer him less.
Yeah. So maybe there's some wiggle room there.
Yeah, but I think that's a guy that like he's going to fight for a roster spot. I don't think he gets one. I think he and Jack are probably going to fight for right field playing time. You're going to have a Cruz starting in center. I doubt they're making the Brian Reynolds transition to first base this offseason.
Didn't sound like it.
But I kind of wish they would, because I think he might be their best option for that. But because I mean I like Billy Cook and everything, but I'm not going to hand him anything either. And also the other guy that I want to consider here, Jim, I'd love to get rid of Connor Joe at $3.2 million. I'm sorry, man. 2 straight years of second half swoons. He's a decent player. Love his hustle. Love his story. Love his personality. I'm sure he's a great clubhouse guy. But I've got younger kids that can do exactly what you do now, buddy. And in a very small sample size, they did it better.
Yeah, I think Connor Joe is going to be 31, 32 years old. He goes.
But how can you dump him if you haven't addressed first base adequately? That's the thing. Like if you've moved Brian Reynolds to first base, I feel a hell of a lot better about just saying goodbye to Connor Joe. That's the only thing he provides that most of the other ones don't, is a first baseman, a capable first baseman. Right?
Yeah.
Billy Cook. You got Billy Cook. I guess Triolo, you could try. They can go on the free agent market. That's out there too. But I think like their better options for getting value sticks is in the outfield.
Right. I think you look at that 3.2 million number and I think, well, do you even think you're going to get that out of them? No. Would I look somewhere? Yeah. So would I look somewhere else for that, even if it ran me more to do it, even in a reasonable way in a platoon situation? That's where I would. That's where I would look to go. So again,
I know they got an offer for Connor Joe at the deadline too.
yeah,
That's the sad thing.
I can't. I don't even want it. I can't. It can't be. It couldn't have been very sexy.
I'm just telling you, I know they did. So when they let him go for nothing, it is what it is, right? We've had a long show. I hope this was therapeutic for you. I can't even promise we're completely done complaining. We may end up getting worked up this week and come back and complain again next week. But playoffs are going on. Let's try to enjoy some baseball. Milwaukee's up 2-0 now on the Mets. And since I'm a forever muck the Fets, I it's okay with me.
Yeah. It's funny the position baseball puts you in, because I've kind of like the Tigers, right? Like, it's kind of fun watching them do some things here. But I also don't want the Pirates to look at the Tigers and go, see, the Tigers stunk and they just got hot. I don't want that to be reinforced anywhere. So there's a push and a pull for me, even with teams like that, because I'd like to just enjoy rooting for them. But God, the Pirates are always, lurking right behind everything we do and think about with baseball.
The funny thing is, I know by April, you and I are going to both be like rolling over that starting rotation and have ourselves talked into some of these offensive answers, kind of like stepping up a little bit. And we'll have ourselves talked back into thinking it might be a year again, right? So,
well, listen,
it hurts right now, though, and I just don't think they help the hurt go away. That's all. And they do this stuff in stages, so like it's a slow burn. Like you had Cherington. Now we'll get some kind of interview in a couple weeks with Bob whenever the pressure ramps up, because he needs to answer to some of this crap.
He has to speak finally.
Yeah, and then he'll talk to some season ticket holder, and they'll come out and be like, "He didn't wash his hands after he peed." Like it's just. The dumb crap never ends. I just kind of want to get back to baseball. I wish this team would think about baseball a lot more often than they think about being right. That's all.
Yeah, I think like that they don't fit the Pittsburgh DNA very well with how fans here think and how other teams operate, and so they're kind of like the outlier. And yeah, you're probably right. We'll be in March, and we'll be looking at a starting rotation that you can build off of. But they've got some work to do. We'll see if they accomplish any of it this offseason.
Right. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Special time this week. We'll do it again, same time next week. I think the week after that. And then what's after that? Is Halloween coming up soon?
Yeah, I hear you have a French maid outfit that you're going to wear. So,
well, if it doesn't work out, we'll just say it's one of those deep fakes, one of those AI deep fakes. That's all. So, hey, good stuff, everybody. And to all of our friends down in Appalachia, and we do have a lot of them, be very, very safe. I hope that you get the help you need. If there's anything I can do for you, if you happen to be listening to this in some shelter or something, and don't have anything better to do than be listening to a pirate show, reach out, man. I'll help you. Like, do the best we can. We love you and respect you, and we're praying for you.
Told you before the show, I've got a good buddy that lives in Asheville, and can't get a hold of him, but I've heard on Facebook that he is fine. It's just everyone's without power, and it's a rough time there. So that's one thing about Pittsburgh. We really don't have to deal with this kind of stuff. We're very fortunate in that regard.
That's right, man. So the moral of that whole show is, so goodbye, David Bednar.
So long. Thank you for your service.
No more besmirching Renegade, my friend.
Let's go back.
Yeah, buddy. See you, everybody.